Welcome back, beautiful people. Today's story is equal parts drama and devotion, and trust us, you'll be hooked from the very first line. Asterisk, the marble floor of Ashford Enterprises gleamed like black ice beneath Sophia Chen's trembling heels. She pressed her back against the locked bathroom door, her breath fogging the mirror behind her as panic clawed at her throat. The executive washroom smelled of expensive cologne and cedar wood, sanctuary she had violated in her desperate flight from the past. You know, most people knock. The voice cut through her terror like a blade through silk. Sophia spun around, her navy blazer catching on the door handle, and found herself staring into the most unsettling pair of green eyes she had ever seen. The man stood by the marble sink, water still dripping from his hands, watching her with the predatory stillness of a wolf studying wounded prey. Julian Ashford. Even without the introduction, she would have known. The same angular jaw from the company website, the same dark hair that probably cost more to maintain than her monthly rent. But the photographs hadn't captured the way his presence seemed to consume all the oxygen in the room, or how his perfectly tailored charcoal suit made him look like he could buy and sell souls before breakfast. "I'm sorry," Sophia managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to intrude." He dried his hands with deliberate slowness, each movement calculated. Running from someone? Question hit too close to home, through the thick door. She could hear Ryan's voice echoing down the hallway, calling her name with that same false warmth that used to make her feel special. Now it only made her skin crawl. "How did you know? People don't usually break into private bathrooms unless they're desperate." Julian's eyes never left her face. "The question is, what kind of desperate?" Sophia tried the door handle again, her knuckles white against the polished brass. Nothing. The electronic lock had engaged the moment she entered, trapping her in this marble tomb with a man who looked like he collected broken things for sport. "The security system is automatic," Julian said, answering her unspoken question. "We'll be here for a while." "How long is a while? Depends on how badly you want to get out." His smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Or how badly someone wants to get in." Ryan's voice grew closer, and Sophia felt her chest tighten. Years of therapy, 2 years of rebuilding herself, brick by brick. And all it took was the sight of his perfectly styled hair to send her spiraling back into the terrified girl she used to be. "Tell me about him," Julian said suddenly. "What? The man you're running from? Tell me about him." Sophia stared at him, searching for mockery in his expression and finding only cold interest. "Why would you want to know?" "Because in about 10 minutes, security will unlock this door. When they do, you'll have to face whatever's waiting out there." Julian moved closer, his presence filling the small space between them. "I find it helps to know what I'm dealing with." The overhead lights flickered, casting shadows across his face that made him look almost demonic. But there was something else there too, something that made her think he might understand what it felt like to run from ghosts. "His name is Ryan Mitchell," she said finally. "He's my ex-boyfriend. I thought I'd never see him again." "But you did. He's here, in this building. He's working for your company, apparently." The words tasted bitter in her mouth. "I was supposed to start my new job today. Fresh start, clean slate, all of that. Instead, I'm hiding in a bathroom like a child." Julian's expression darkened. "Ryan Mitchell, corporate development. You know him?" "I hired him." The admission hung between them like a loaded gun. 3 weeks ago, came with glowing recommendations. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. Of course Julian had hired him. Of course the universe would find a way to twist the knife deeper, so then you know what kind of man he is. "I know what his resume says. I know he's charming, well-connected, and exactly the type of ambitious climber this company attracts." Julian stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and intoxicating. "What I don't know is why the sight of him made you run like your life depended on it." The question hung in the air between them, sharp and demanding. Sophia could feel her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble under the weight of his stare. There was something about Julian Ashford that made her want to confess her sins, to lay her broken pieces at his feet and beg him to put her back together. But she had learned the hard way that men like him didn't fix things. They consumed them. That's not your concern, she said, straightening her shoulders with what little dignity she had left. Julian smiled then, a slow, dangerous curve of his lips that made her pulse stutter. Everything that happens in my building is my concern, Miss Chen, especially when it involves my employees hiding in my private bathroom. The lock disengaged with a soft click, the sound echoing through the marble chamber like a death knell. Julian reached past her, his arm brushing against her shoulder as he grasped the door handle. Ready to face the music, he asked. But as the door swung open, revealing Ryan's shocked face in the hallway beyond, Sophia realized she wasn't ready for anything, especially not for the way Julian's hand settled possessively on the small of her back, or the predatory smile that spread across his lips as he stepped into the hallway beside her. The hallway stretched before them like a battlefield, fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the corporate wasteland. Ryan stood frozen 15 feet away, his perfect smile faltering as he took in the sight of Sophia emerging from Julian's private sanctuary with the CEO's hand burning against her spine. Well, Julian said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made board members sweat. This is interesting. Ryan recovered quickly, the way he always did. That had been his gift, his curse, the ability to slide on whatever mask the situation required, becoming exactly what people needed him to be until he got what he wanted. Mr. Ashford, Ryan said, stepping forward with his hand extended. Ryan Mitchell from Corporate Development. I was just looking for Sophia. We're old friends. Julian's laugh was soft and deadly. Friends, how quaint. He didn't move to shake Ryan's hand, leaving it hanging in the air between them like a dead thing. Tell me, Mr. Mitchell, do you make a habit of hunting down old friends on their first day at new jobs? The question hit its mark. Sophia watched. Ryan's jaw tightened, saw the flash of anger he couldn't quite hide behind his practiced charm. She had seen that look before, usually right before he started explaining why everything was her fault. It's not like that, Ryan said, his voice still. Smooth, but with an edge that made Sophia's skin crawl. Sophia and I have history. I just wanted to welcome her to the company. How thoughtful, Julian replied. His hand hadn't moved from Sophia's back, and she could feel the heat of his palm through her blazer. Miss Chen, would you like me to? Have security escort Mr. Mitchell back to his department? The offer hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Sophia could feel both men watching her, waiting for her response. Ryan's eyes held a warning she recognized, the same look he used to give her when she considered speaking up in public. The look that said there would be consequences later when they were alone. But Julian's presence beside her felt like armor, like protection wrapped in expensive fabric and dangerous intentions. That won't be necessary, she said finally, hating how small her voice sounded. Ryan, I need to get to my meeting. Of course, Ryan said, his smile brightening with false warmth. I wouldn't want to keep you. Maybe we can grab coffee later. To catch up properly. Should be busy. Julian said before Sophia could respond. First day and all, I'm sure you understand. The territorial display wasn't lost on any of them. Ryan's eyes flickered between Julian and Sophia, calculating, measuring. She knew that look too. It was the same expression he wore when he found her talking to other men, when he decided she needed to be reminded who she belonged to. Perhaps another time then, Ryan said. He looked directly at Sophia, his gaze boring into her like a drill. I'll be seeing you around, Soph. We have so much to catch up on. The nickname hit her like a physical blow, only Ryan had ever called. Her that whispered it against her ear when they were tangled in sheets and promises she thought would last forever. Hearing it now, in this sterile hallway with Julian's hand on her back, felt like a violation. Ryan walked away with that confident stride she remembered, disappearing around the corner toward the elevators. But Sophia could still feel his presence like a shadow, dark and inescapable. Interesting fellow, Julian said once they were alone. It's very persistent. You don't know the half of it. The words slipped out before she could stop them, raw and honest in a way that made her want to disappear. Julian turned to face her fully, his green eyes sharp with interest. Tell me. I can't. Sophia stepped away from him, immediately missing the warmth of his hand on her skin. I need to get to my meeting. I'm already late. The meeting can wait. Julian moved with predatory grace, backing her against the wall with nothing but proximity and presence.
Oh.
But this conversation cannot. The corridor felt smaller suddenly, the walls closing in around them. Julian stood close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes, could count the subtle lines around them that spoke of late nights and hard decisions. "He hurt you," Julian said. It wasn't a question. Sophia's laugh came out broken and bitter. Hurt is such a simple word. Ryan Mitchell doesn't just hurt people. He dismantles them, piece by piece, until they don't remember who they were before him. And yet you're here. Whole, breathing, fighting. Am I? The question escaped before she could cage it. Because 5 minutes ago I was hiding in a bathroom, and 30 seconds ago I let him call me by a name I swore I'd never answer to again. Julian reached up, his fingers ghosting along her jawline with surprising gentleness. "You're stronger than you think. How would you know? Because weak people don't survive in my world. You're here, aren't you? Standing in my hallway working for my company, wearing that armor of yours like you were born to it." His touch was electric, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with corporate hierarchies and everything to do with the hunger she could see lurking behind his carefully controlled expression. "This is a mistake," Sophia whispered. "Probably." Luyan's thumb traced across her lower lip, and she felt something deep inside her chest crack open. "But I've built an empire on profitable mistakes." The sound of approaching footsteps shattered the moment. Julian dropped his hand and stepped back just as a group of executives rounded the corner, their chatter filling the hallway with corporate white noise. "Miss Chen," Julian said, his voice returning to its professional timbre, "let me escort you to your meeting. We wouldn't want you to get lost on your first day." As they walked toward the marketing department, Sophia could feel the weight of curious stares following them. The CEO didn't usually escort new hires to their first meetings. Hell, the CEO didn't usually know new hires existed. But as they approached the conference room where her new life was supposed to begin, Sophia realized she had already crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Julian Ashford was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with corporate power and everything to do with the way he looked at her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. And the most terrifying part was how much she wanted to let him try. "One more thing," Julian said as they stopped outside the conference room door. "If Ryan Mitchell bothers you again, I want to know about it immediately." "Why would you care?" Julian's smile was sharp and cold and beautiful. "Because I protect what's mine, Miss Chen. And as of today, you work for me." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it sent heat spiraling through her veins like whiskey, dangerous and intoxicating. As she walked into the conference room, Sophia realized she had jumped from one fire into another. The only question was which one would burn her alive first. 3 weeks into her employment at Ashford Enterprises, Sophia had learned to navigate the gleaming corridors with the efficiency of a woman who understood that survival meant invisibility. Left late, and buried herself in market research reports that made her eyes burn under the fluorescent lights, but she couldn't escape Julian Ashford. He appeared in doorways when she least expected it, materializing like smoke in expensive suits that cost more than her college tuition. Their conversations were brief, professional, loaded with undercurrents that made her pulse race, and her common sense scream warnings she refused to heed. "Working late again, Miss Chen?" His voice cut through the silence of the empty marketing floor, where Sophia sat surrounded by the wreckage of a presentation that had to be perfect by morning. The building had emptied hours ago, leaving only the hum of computers and the distant rumble of traffic 40 floors below. "The Morrison account won't analyze itself," she said without looking up from her laptop screen. She had learned not to look at him directly. It was safer that way. Julian moved through the darkness between the cubicles like a predator stalking prey, his footsteps muffled by expensive leather soles on corporate carpet. "Go home, Sophia." The use of her first name sent electricity down her spine. In 3 weeks, he had never once called her anything but Miss Chen in front of others. But here, in the shadows and silence, the rules seemed different.
Almost.
"Finished, you're avoiding him." Julian perched on the edge of her desk, close enough that she could smell his cologne, could feel the heat radiating from his body through his rolled-up shirt sleeves. Ryan's been asking questions about you. That got her attention. Sophia looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time in days. They were darker in the low light, forest green shot through with gold like ancient secrets. What kind of questions? The kind that suggest he's not content to let sleeping dogs lie. Julian's voice was soft, dangerous. He's been digging into your employment history, your references, asking colleagues about your work habits, your social life. Ice flooded Sophia's veins. He can't do that. He can, and he is. The question is why. Julian leaned closer, his presence overwhelming in the intimate darkness. What are you not telling me, Sophia? The way he said her name made her want to confess everything. The way Ryan used to track her movements, monitor her phone calls, isolate her from friends until she was completely dependent on him. The way he had systematically drained her bank account, convinced her to quit her job, made her believe she was worthless. Without him, the way she had finally escaped, stealing away in the middle of the night with nothing but a suitcase and the phone number for a women's shelter. He's my ex-boyfriend, she said finally. That's all you need to know. That's where you're wrong. Julian's hand covered hers on the keyboard, his skin burning against her fingers. Because 2 days ago he requested a transfer to the marketing department. As your direct supervisor, the words hit her like a physical blow. Sophia jerked her hand away, knocking over her coffee cup and sending lukewarm liquid cascading across her desk. He can't. I won't let him. It's already been approved. Julian's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. The paperwork goes through tomorrow. Panic clawed at Sophia's throat, the same suffocating terror she had felt 2 years ago. When she realized Ryan had hidden her car keys, canceled her credit cards, convinced her boss that she was unreliable, he was going to trap her again, piece by piece, until she forgot she had ever been free. I have to quit, she whispered. Do you want to quit? The question stopped her cold. Did she want to quit? This job was everything she had worked for. The opportunity to prove she could succeed on her own terms. But Ryan's presence would poison it, turn her sanctuary into another prison. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Julian stood, pacing to the floor-tisseling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city below. The question is how far you're willing to go to fight for what you want. What are you suggesting? He turned back to her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. There was hunger there, calculation. The look of a man who had never met a problem he couldn't solve or a person he couldn't buy. Stay close to me. Let people see us together. Ryan won't dare touch what belongs to me. I don't belong to anyone. The words came out sharper than she intended, but Julian only smiled. Don't you? The question hung between them like a challenge. Sophia thought about the way her pulse spiked every time he entered a room, the way she found herself staying, late just hoping he might appear. The way his protection felt like salvation and damnation wrapped in the same expensive package. This is insane, she said. Probably. Lean moved closer, backing her against the window until the cold glass pressed against her spine. But insanity has served me well in business. Why not in other areas? His hands braced against the glass on either side of her head, caging her in warmth and shadows and the intoxicating scent of power. The city sparkled below them, a constellation of lights. That made her feel like they were floating in space, untouchable and infinite. Tell me about him, Julian said, his voice low and hypnotic. Tell me what he did to you. God, the words spilled out of her like blood from a wound. 2 years of carefully buried trauma clawing its way to the surface. She told him about the isolation, the financial control, the way Ryan had convinced her that her friends were jealous, her family was toxic, that he was the only person who truly understood her. She told him about the night she found Ryan with another woman, and how he had made it her fault. About the way he had threatened to ruin her career, her reputation, her life, if she ever tried to leave him. And finally, she told him about the escape, the terrifying moment when she realized that staying would destroy her. And leaving might destroy her too, but at least she would die free. Julian listened without interruption, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, the silence stretched between them, like a bridge she wasn't sure she was brave enough to cross. "He won't touch you again," Julian said finally, and there was something in his voice that made her believe him. Something dark and absolute and utterly ruthless. "You can't promise that. I can promise that and more." His thumb traced along her jawline, the same gesture he had made in the hallway 3 weeks ago. "But it will cost you." "What kind of cost?" Julian's smile was beautiful and terrible. "The kind that changes everything." Before she could ask what he meant, his mouth was on hers, hot and demanding and unlike anything she had ever experienced. Ryan's kisses had been calculated, designed to take rather than give. Julian kissed like he was claiming territory, like he was branding her soul with his name. When they broke apart, Sophia's lungs burned and her heart hammered against her ribs, like a caged bird. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "Gosh, the best ones usually are." Julian stepped back, straightening his tie with practiced ease. "Go home, Sophia. And tomorrow, we're something that makes it clear you're mine." As he disappeared into the shadows between the cubicles, Sophia pressed her fingers to her lips and tried to convince herself she hadn't just sold her soul to the devil. But as she gathered her things and headed for the elevator, she couldn't shake the feeling that Julian Ashford was exactly the kind of devil she had been waiting for her entire life. The red dress Julian had sent to her apartment hung like liquid fire against her skin. Sophia stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. The dress was beautiful, expensive, and utterly inappropriate. For office wear, screen possession, claimed territory, announced to the world that she belonged to someone powerful enough to dress her in silk and diamonds. The diamond necklace had arrived with the dress, nestled in black velvet light captured Starlight. No note, no explanation, just Julian's unmistakable signature on power and control. Her phone buzzed against the marble countertop. Text from an unknown number made her blood run cold. "You look beautiful in red. See you at the office, Soph, Ryan." Somehow he had gotten her personal number, was watching her, knew what she was wearing before she had even left her apartment. The familiar terror crept up her spine like ice water, but this time it was accompanied by something else. Rage. She was done being afraid. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt like ascending to her own execution. Ow. Julian had requested her presence at the morning board meeting, ostensibly to present the Morrison account analysis. But they both knew this was theater, a performance designed to establish ownership in front of the corporate elite, opened with whisper-soft precision, revealing a tableau of power that would have intimidated her a month ago. 27 of the city's most influential business leaders sat around a table. That probably cost more than most people's houses, their collective net worth enough to buy small countries. Julian stood at the head of the table, commanding attention. Without effort, his eyes found hers across the room, dark with approval, and something hungrier, more possessive. He had seen the dress, the necklace, understood her silent acceptance of his terms. "Gentlemen," Julian said, his voice cutting through the morning chatter, "I'd like you to meet Sophia Chen, our new marketing coordinator. She'll be presenting the Morrison analysis." The presentation went flawlessly. Sophia had memorized every number, every projection, every strategic recommendation, until they flowed from her lips like poetry. But she was acutely aware of Julian's presence, the way he watched her move, the proprietary satisfaction in his gaze that announced her status to anyone paying attention. It wasn't until she was gathering her materials that she noticed Ryan standing in the doorway. He looked different somehow, sharper, more dangerous. The charming mask had slipped, revealing something calculating and cruel underneath. He was no longer the man who had whispered sweet lies and empty promises. This was the predator she remembered from their final confrontation, the one who had threatened to destroy her if she ever tried to leave. "Excellent presentation, Miss Chen," Julian said, his hand settling on her lower back in a gesture of unmistakable claim. "Perhaps you could stay behind to discuss the implementation timeline." The board members filed out, their conversations flowing around Ryan like water around stone. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched Sophia with eyes that promised retribution. When the room was empty, except for the three of them, the tension became suffocating. "Mr. Mitchell," Julian said, his voice pleasant and deadly, "was there something you needed?" "Actually, yes." Ryan stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with deliberate precision. "I wanted to congratulate Sophia on her promotion." "Promotion." Sophia's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Oh." Ryan's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Didn't you know? You've been selected for a very special project. Julian and I discussed it yesterday." The words hit like physical blows. Sophia turned to Julian, searching his face for denial, for explanation, for anything that would make sense of the ice spreading through her veins. Julian's expression was carefully neutral, but she caught the flicker of something that might have been regret in his eyes. "What project?" she asked. "A joint venture between corporate development and marketing," Ryan said, moving closer with predatory grace. "You'll be working directly under my supervision, very closely, very intimately."
No.
The word tore from Sophia's throat like a wounded animal. She looked at Julian, pleading silently for him to deny it, to explain that this was some kind of mistake. Julian's silence was answer enough. "You did this?" she whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than any physical wound. "You promised to protect me, and you gave me to him. Sophia, it's not what you think." Julian stepped toward her, but she backed away, pressing against the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered no escape. "Isn't it?" Ryan's laugh was soft and vicious. "Julian and I had a very enlightening conversation about your value to the company, about how your particular talents might be better utilized in corporate development." The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Sophia felt the world tilt sideways, her carefully rebuilt reality crumbling around her like a house of cards. "You sold me," she said to Julian, the accusation hanging between them like a death sentence. "I protected you," Julian replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "This way you'll be under Ryan's direct supervision, but you'll still report to me. I can monitor the situation, ensure your safety." "My safety?" Sophia's laugh was bitter and broken. "You just handed me over to the man who nearly destroyed me. For what? Some business deal? Some corporate advancement?" Ryan moved closer, close. Enough that she could smell his cologne, the same scent that used to make her feel safe and now made her stomach turn. "Don't be dramatic, Soph," he said, his voice gentle and poisonous. "We're going to work very well together, just like old times." The threat was unmistakable. Ryan intended to finish what he had started 2 years ago, to break her down piece by piece until she forgot she had ever been strong enough to leave him. "I quit," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her chest. "No," Julian said, his mask finally slipping to reveal something desperate and hungry. "You don't understand. This is the only way to keep you safe. If you're working for Ryan, he has no reason to hurt you. But if you quit, if you run again, he'll follow. He'll never stop hunting. So instead, you fed me to the wolf." Sophia straightened her shoulders, gathering the remnants of her dignity around her like armor. "At least when Ryan destroyed me the first time, he had the honesty to call it love." She moved toward the door, but Ryan stepped into her path, his presence filling the space between her and freedom. "Where are you going, Soph? We haven't finished our reunion. Get out of my way." "I don't think so." Ryan's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with the same casual cruelty she remembered. "We have so much catching up to do." The pain was immediate and familiar, a reminder of bruises that had faded but never really healed. Sophia tried to pull away, but Ryan's grip tightened, his fingers pressing into the tender skin of her wrists like a vice. "Let her go," Julian said, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. "Or what?" Ryan's eyes never left Sophia's face. "You'll fire me? We both know you need this deal more than you need one broken little girl." The words hit their target. Julian's jaw tightened, but he didn't move, didn't intervene, didn't do anything to save her from the nightmare he had helped orchestrate. Sophia understood then that she was completely alone. Julian's protection had been an illusion, a beautiful lie wrapped in expensive gifts and heated kisses. He was no different from Ryan, no different from any of the men who saw her as something to be owned, controlled, used. "You're right," she said to Ryan, her voice steady and cold. "We do have a lot to catch up on." His grip loosened slightly. Surprised by her sudden compliance, It was all the opening she needed. Sophia brought her knee up hard and fast, connecting with Ryan's solar plexus with enough force to double him over. As he gasped for breath, she wrenched her wrist free and bolted for the door. "Sophia, wait," Julian called after her, but she was already running, her heels clicking against the marble floors like gunshots in the corporate silence. She ran past the elevator, past the startled faces of executives and assistants, past the gleaming facade of success and power that had promised salvation and delivered only another kind of cage. This time, she wouldn't just disappear in the night. This time, she would burn their world down on her way out. The warehouse district at midnight was a graveyard of broken dreams and abandoned ambitions. Sophia stood in the shadows between two derelict buildings, her red dress now torn and stained with the evidence of her escape. The diamonds around her throat caught the streetlight. Like tears made of starfire. She had been running for 6 hours. The burner phone in her purse buzzed with another message from Julian. She didn't need to read it to know he was searching for her, calling in favors, using his considerable resources to track her down. He would find her eventually, and like Julian Ashford always did. But first, she had work to finish. The flash drive in her hand contained everything. 3 months of carefully copied files, financial records, correspondence between Julian and Ryan that would destroy them both. She had been stealing information since her second week at Ashford Enterprises. Driven by instincts honed through 2 years of survival, trust no one, document everything. Always have an exit strategy. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed. Off the concrete walls, Sophia slipped deeper into the shadows, her heart hammering against her ribs as 2 figures emerged from the maze of shipping containers. Julian and Ryan walked side by side like old friends, their expensive suits incongruous. Against the industrial wasteland, they moved with the confidence of men who had never doubted their right to take whatever they wanted. "She's here somewhere," Ryan said, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. "The GPS tracker in the necklace shows she stopped moving 20 minutes ago, of course." Sophia's hand went to the diamonds at her throat, Julian's beautiful chain now revealed as another form of shackle. She should have known better than to trust a gift from a man who collected broken things. "When we find her," Julian said, and his voice was soft and deadly, "she's mine to handle. This situation requires delicacy. Delicacy." Ryan laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "She's a wounded animal, Julian. Wounded animals are dangerous. They bite. She's also in possession of information that could destroy both of us." Julian stopped walking, his eyes scanning the shadows where Sophia crouched like prey. The Morrison account wasn't the only thing she's been analyzing. She's been copying files, financial records, correspondence. If that information reaches the wrong people, we'll both face criminal charges. Sophia felt a cold smile spread across her lips. Julian was finally beginning to understand what he was dealing with. She wasn't the broken girl who had hidden in his bathroom a lifetime ago. She was something harder now, sharper, forged in the fire of betrayal and abandonment. "So what do you propose?" Ryan asked. "We give her what she wants, which is..." Julian's pause stretched like a held breath. "Freedom. Real freedom. New identity. Clean papers. Enough money to disappear completely. In exchange for the files and her silence, and if she refuses..." Another pause. Longer this time. "Then we ensure her silence by other means." The threat hung in the air like smog. Sophia understood with crystalline clarity that she was no longer dealing with corporate politics or romantic entanglements. This was about survival, pure and simple. She stepped out of the shadows. "Hello, boys." Both men spun toward her voice, their faces showing identical expressions of surprise and calculation. Julian recovered first, his mask of corporate charm sliding back into place like armor. "Sophia, we've been looking for you. I'm sure you have." She held up the flash drive, letting it catch the light. "Looking for this." Ryan moved first, lunging toward her with the same predatory speed she remembered from their final confrontation 2 years ago. But Sophia was ready this time. She sidestepped his charge, letting momentum carry him past her into the concrete wall behind. Still as subtle as ever, Ryan. She kept the flash drive raised, a digital sword of Damocles hanging over both their heads. "Tell me, Julian, what did you promise him in exchange for helping you cage me?" Julian's eyes never left her face. Right. The Morrison account. Full partnership in the corporate development division. A chance to prove his worth to the company. What did he promise you? Information. Julian's voice was steady, but she caught the flicker of something that might have been shame in his expression. About your past, your weaknesses, your pressure points. He convinced me that the only way to protect you was to control you. Sophia laughed, the sound echoing off the warehouse walls like breaking glass. Protect me. Is that what you call selling? Me to my abuser? I never meant for it to go that far. Julian stepped closer, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary, just until we could find another solution. What other solution? There is no other solution with men like you. Sophia's voice cracked. With 2 years of buried pain, you see something you want and you take it. You dress it up in pretty words and expensive gifts, but underneath it's always the same. Possession, control, ownership. Ryan had recovered from his collision with the wall, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. You always were dramatic, Soph. This doesn't have to end badly. Just give us the drive and walk away. Walk away to what? Another city, another name, another chance for you to find me and start this whole cycle over again? Sophia shook her head. I'm done running. Then what do you want? Julian asked. The question hung between them like a challenge. What did she want? Freedom was too simple, too abstract. Justice was a luxury she couldn't afford. Revenge was tempting, but ultimately hollow. I want you to destroy each other, she said finally. She pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over the send button. On the screen was an email address to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, the SEC, and 3 major news outlets. Attached were copies of every file she had stolen, every incriminating document, every piece of evidence that would bring down Julian's empire and Ryan's carefully constructed new life. Those files don't just contain information about illegal financial dealings, she continued, watching their faces pale in the streetlight. They contain evidence of systematic harassment, abuse of power, and conspiracy to commit assault. Ryan's history with other women, Julian's pattern of buying silence from employees who got too close to the truth. You're bluffing, Ryan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Sophia's smile was sharp and beautiful and completely without mercy. There are 7 other women, Ryan. 7 other lives you tried to destroy before mine. And Julian did. You really think I wouldn't notice the NDAs, the settlement payments, the suspicious resignations of female employees who got too close to the executive floor? Julian's carefully constructed mask finally cracked. If you send that information, you'll destroy innocent people. The company employs thousands of workers who depend on their jobs to feed their families. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to trade me like livestock. Sophia's thumb moved closer to the send button. But I'm not completely heartless. I'll give you a choice. What kind of choice? Confession. Full admission of guilt to the authorities. Ryan admits to harassment, stalking, and abuse. Julian admits to conspiracy, financial fraud, and systematic cover-up of workplace harassment. You both serve your time, pay your debts to society, and leave me the hell alone. And if we refuse? Ryan asked. Then I send this email, and you both go down anyway. But instead of controlling the narrative, you become victims of it. The media will tear you apart. Stockholders will demand blood, and by the time the legal system is finished with you, prison will seem like a vacation. The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Sophia could see them calculating, weighing their options, searching for some angle that would let them maintain control. There's a third option, Julian said finally. I'm listening. Come back. Forget this vendetta. Forget the files. Forget everything that's happened. I'll transfer Ryan to the London office, give you complete autonomy in marketing. Triple your salary. We can start over. The offer hung in the air like poisoned honey. Sophia felt the familiar tug of temptation, the seductive promise of security and comfort that had trapped her before. And in exchange, your silence, your loyalty. Complete cooperation. My soul, she translated. Julian's smile was sad and beautiful and utterly ruthless, if that's what you want to call it. For a moment, Sophia wavered. The alternative was terrifying in its uncertainty. No job, no references, no safety net except her own strength and determination. She would be starting over with nothing but the clothes on her back and the knowledge that she had burned every bridge behind her. But as she looked at Julian's face, she saw something that made her decision inevitable. He still thought he could win, still believed that she was weak enough, broken enough, desperate enough to trade her freedom for his protection. He was wrong. "Julian," she said softly, "go to hell." She pressed send. The phone screen lit up with confirmation messages as the emails raced through cyberspace toward their destinations. In a matter of hours, the carefully constructed lives of both men would begin to crumble. Ryan lunged for her again, but this time Julian caught his arm. "It's over," Julian said, his voice hollow with defeat. "Let her go." "Like hell," Ryan snarled, trying to break free from Julian's grip. "She's destroyed everything. I'll kill her before I let her walk away." The confession hung in the air like a death sentence. Julian's eyes widened as he realized what Ryan had just admitted, what kind of man he had allied himself with. "You're insane," Julian whispered. "I'm practical," Ryan replied, finally breaking free from Julian's restraint. "Dead." "Girls don't testify." He pulled a knife from his jacket, the blade catching the streetlight like liquid silver. Sophia backed away. But there was nowhere to run in the narrow alley between the warehouses. Julian moved without thinking, throwing himself between Ryan and Sophia as the blade descended. The knife slid between his ribs with sickening ease, and he collapsed to the concrete with a sound like breaking wings. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and viscous in the artificial light. Sophia dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her hands against the wound in a futile attempt to stem the bleeding. "Why?" she whispered. Julian's eyes were growing glassy, but his voice was steady. "Because you were right about everything. About me, about him, about what we were doing to you." His hand found hers, slick with blood and surprisingly warm. "Sorry, Sophia, for all of it." Ryan stood over them, the knife still in his hand, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "This is your fault. All of it. If you had just stayed where you belonged, none of this would have happened." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Someone had heard the commotion, called the police. Help was coming, but it would be too late for Julian. "Run," Julian whispered to Sophia. "Before they get here, start over. Be free." But Sophia didn't run. She stayed beside him, holding his hand as the life drained from his eyes, watching the man who had tried to own her make the only selfless choice of his adult life. When the police arrived, they found Ryan Mitchell standing over Julian Ashford's body, still holding the bloody knife. Mumbling incoherently about property and possession and women who didn't know their place, they found Sophia Chen kneeling in a pool of blood, her red dress stained black. Diamonds scattered around her like fallen stars, and they found the truth. All of it. Waiting in the inboxes of reporters and federal agents who would spend the next months unraveling a web of corruption that reached into the highest levels of corporate America. 6 months later, Sophia stood on a beach in Northern California. Watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, she had testified at 3 trials, spoken to countless reporters, endured death threats from Julian's business associates, and love letters from strangers who saw her as some kind of feminist icon. She was none of those things. She was just a woman who had refused to stay broken, who had chosen freedom over safety, truth over comfort. The settlement money from Ashford Enterprises would last her the rest of her life if she was careful. She didn't plan to be careful. She planned to be bold, reckless, authentically herself for the first time in years. Her phone buzzed with a message from her new therapist, reminding her about their appointment next week. Sophia smiled and deleted it. Meant to be kept, and some chains were meant to be broken. She walked into the waves, letting the cold Pacific water wash the salt from her cheeks and the last traces of diamond dust from her hair. Behind her, the sun died in flames of gold and crimson, Ahead of her stretched an ocean of infinite possibility. Sophia Chen had finally learned to swim in deep water. Asterisk, don't forget to like if this story gave you all the feels. Subscribe for more addictive love stories. Share with someone who needs a good cry hit. The bell for notifications on new uploads. Thank you for watching. Your support means everything to us. The end.